such an you have such an atypical situation that happens there. In fact, Donna Michaelis is my counterpart over Virginia, and we're going to be working with her and finding out more information on this thing. They have spent, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're immediately putting 90 metal detectors in the elementary schools. And I don't know if that doesn't set the wrong tenor for an elementary principal about this. My point is, and I'm a gun owner, lock the damn guns up. How did that kid ever get his hands on those guns? That's my major problem right there. So it's not so much a school problem as it is a parent or guardian problem and an irresponsibility of the gun owner to lock this thing up. And of course, that investigation is still going on. But can you imagine trying to walk kindergartners through a metal detector? We're talking a 6-year-old here. What is that, a first grader maybe? And talk about trauma. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen as far as that's concerned. I don't have a clear-cut answer for you on this one, other than to say what we always preach is keep your ear to the ground, keep your eyes. If you see something or hear something, say something. And, I can't imagine, and I'm not an elementary principal type, so I can't speak, with any kind of authority, for lack of a better term there, how you would handle that. I would tell the kids that if you hear of anybody that might be doing something that might harm somebody, would you please tell us, talk in their, in their vernacular and see what they can come up with. But it's going to be interesting. We're going to have lessons learned from that Virginia model. And I certainly will steal those ideas and make them very prevalent on our website and get it pushed out through KSA and through KDE on what some strategies might be there. But right now, I can tell you that every school that I've known where where they've had shootings, 5 years after they have that, the metal detectors are pushed off to the side and they go back to relationship issues and bringing in, like Chris Berrier was talking about earlier, about the relationship you have with your SROs. Our SROs get a bad rap based on one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. You'll find something in another state where a police officer has done something that probably shouldn't have done. And so automatically that casts a shadow off all of our SROs. The SROs are there primarily to establish relationships with the kids and help out with the staff members as well. And so I'm an advocate of having SROs in elementary schools as well, so that they can understand the police officers are their friend and not, the bad guy that's going to come around and arrest their parents. And so the amount of prevention that occurs by having an officer that has a good professional relationship with the students at an early age can also be a preventative thing. Morgan? You're muted.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Next question says, some districts provide radios or walkie-talkies to all staff in the buildings. What are your thoughts on this?
If that makes them feel comfortable, that's fine. I would have to find out a little bit more why they're doing that so that they could, I guess, report things from wherever place they are. Your newer schools have intercom systems where they can patch in immediately into the offices. Some of the older buildings, it's pretty archaic, and so maybe walkie-talkies might not be a bad idea. But you have to be careful about what I would call radio protocol, things you should do and things you shouldn't do. In other words, it shouldn't be a ratchet jaws citizens band radio where you're saying who's gone where and why, what they're doing there. So it needs to be handled with professionality as far as that's concerned. But anything that you can do to enhance communication, I would be all for that.
When a child returns to school following a threat situation, what precautions should be in place and how can we ease our teachers' minds that their classrooms are safe?
Oh my God, that's right on our front burners today. We have a case like this going on in Boone County right now. We have superintendents that are totally frustrated with this issue about when we expel a kid for bringing a firearm onto school, they have to be out for 1 calendar year. Well, if they start the suspension or the expulsion in March, then they can be reinstated in February the next year. At my old age and with the years of experience I got and the scars down my back, for any of you who's a Star Trek person, I'm going to give you a Spockism. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of a few. We have 95% to 98% of the kids in our state that are coming to school every day doing the right things. We have 2 to 3 to 4% that are there for other reasons other than their education. And I don't think they have the right to be in that building. Now, we need to have robust alternative education programming. And that doesn't mean that you put your bad teachers that you're afraid to fire into alternative ed. That doesn't mean that you put your bad principals that can't run a school heading up an alternative program. We need to have people that are gifted in alternative ed working with high-risk kids to be a part of that. I'm a strong advocate of, I'm at the point right now where I'm crafting legislation to free up the superintendents to extend more days when it comes to a year-long expulsion. I think that the boards of education should hear the merits of the case. And then if they decide the kid needs to stay out for another year, let's let them do virtual learning. We'll give them that opportunity, but walk in the hallways with the kids who are law-abiding citizens and the disruptors that we have during the school day. Again, I go back to being a high school principal. When I talk to my elementary colleagues around the state, their biggest problem is that they have one kid in a class that goes crazy, and then the whole class gets disturbed, and it's somebody that they can't move out. And they don't have the services for those. So I think that we need to tap our legislators with a little bit of money, or maybe a whole lot of money, to come up with more of a robust program, not only for secondary kids, but for elementary kids as well.
What preventative steps would you take for elementary students leaving the building without permission?
Oh, gosh. Honestly, I don't know. I'll be honest with you on that. But I would say that when they leave the building without permission, so we're talking about runners, I think is what they refer to them as. More now than ever before, schools are equipped with door alarms, and they are equipped with security cameras for all of the exterior doors. So I would want to be sure that door alarms were there, and that they have current video that they can find out when the kids left. But I go back to adult supervision issues. I would want to find out how that kid snuck out. And kids are kids, and they're smarter than us adults sometimes, and they'll find ways to penetrate a system where they can get on out of here and whatever. But I think that what we need to do when you look at court cases on situations where schools are being sued, the one thing that keeps us out of lawsuits is when we make a good faith effort to try to stop something from happening. So if we had the door alarms, if we have the video cameras, if we have the periodic attendance checks and things like that, those are what we call reasonable and customary practices that you should have. But if you're not checking the roll, and if you don't have some kind of plan to make sure that those doors are secured throughout the school day, then that'll come back to haunt us right there. But I've seen kids jump out of a recess situation and scat. And if the teachers are sitting on the bench looking at their cell phones, we have a problem with that. But if you have two teachers out there on supervision trying to keep one end and the other end and keep the kids pinned in the middle, I think that shows a good faith effort right there. But we're not perfect. And one of the things that I've been trying to get across to the press for years is that if you do the math, we only have the kids 15% of a calendar year, and we are not miracle workers, and we are not perfect. And when you have one teacher and 25 kids, you don't have a one-to-one defense right there. You're 1 to 25. You're lucky to be able to keep it above water most of the time. I'm not trying to give us excuses, but I'm trying to put a reality check in there that our principals and our staff members, both certified and classified, do the best they can with what they've got. And I would make sure that runner, if we catch that kid, you have a parent conference with the kids and threaten him or her with all kinds of disciplinary issues. And hopefully you'll have the parents on board with that. But sometimes we don't get as much support with their parents like we should. And there's another problem that we could probably talk about down the road. Morgan?
Next question. You have shared in previous meetings that the number one habit to prevent kids from harming one another is to have adults monitoring different areas of the building all day long. Sounds almost too simple. Can you elaborate?
Yes, I won't expose the high school that I went to, but the principal called me this about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, the kids are running the high school. not the adults. What's going on? And I was out there in March. And so I just went out and just looked around and was watching during class changes. And I noticed that, during March Madness, what are we doing? We got our brackets and we're over in the corner. We're trying to see who won the ball game the other night. Okay. So the teachers were clumping over here and the kids were clumping over here and doing their thing. And so I said, well, let's try something here. Let's divide and conquer. I mean, this is not rocket science, folks. I hope you understand that. And I said, and also don't do passive supervision, do active supervision. Passive supervision is where you're plastered up against the wall, hoping no kid talks to you, but you're moving your head back and forth like a doll. Okay, that's passive. Active is when you get out and you start working the group and you divide and conquer and you spread out, as much as possible and engage the kids. And one of the things that I try to tell teachers is that we're going to assign you X number of students for grades, but every kid that comes through that front door is your kid for supervision. So don't think it's just because your kids you see in the hallway that you can discipline, but the other kids you can't. You're all charged with this, with monitoring all those kids when you're on supervision. So they need to take 2 steps out from the door and talk to the kids as they come by and encourage them to keep on moving and make some nice comments to them. And that gets back to that connectivity thing piece right there. But when we did this at the high school for 3 days, the kids were complaining. They said, dang, we can't go anywhere unless there's a teacher there staring at us, talking to us. So teachers need to get off their butts, get out in the hallway and work the crowd and separate.
Allison elaborated on the Pulaski County situation. She said Pulaski County used the Raptor management system and online app to document students who are safe, unaccounted for during an emergency. But for now, those are all the questions that we have in the chat.
Okay, let me throw out a few seeds there. I want you to write down this law. It's KRS 610-345. I'm the poster child of this law because I had a kid that came to my school and I didn't know anything about his criminal background. And he was from out of county. I was told to enroll the kid mid-season. And the next day the kid brought out a switchblade and cut a kid flat open, had to have 48 stitches in his arm. I later found out that that kid had done 17 months in a juvenile institution for being an accomplice to murder. He was at my front doorstep and I was told to enroll that kid. So Wayne Young, who you probably know, and he's my papaw when it comes to laws in the state of Kentucky and helping us administrators here. He wrote a law that any time that a juvenile has been arrested with a serious misdemeanor or a serious crime, a felony, you are to be notified within 24 hours. Okay, when I go around the state and I talk to principals, I said, I just found out from the Office of Administrative Courts here that you've had 48 juvenile arrests this year. How many of those came to you? None. And see, your judges are supposed to be telling your court clerks to send that information when a kid's been charged, not when a kid has been found guilty, because you can be charged now, let's say, what is the day, the 18th? Okay, you may not go to court until the end of May. And teachers need to know that kid was a sex offender, that kid carried a firearm, that kid was a pusher, whatever the case may be. Teachers need to know that. So 610-345, you need to be working with your CDWs. We found out that a CDW didn't even know what that law was about. And that's something that's going to help protect us a little bit more. At least the teachers and the principals need to know what they're getting. Another thing that really concerns me, and this is kind of under the same umbrella, and those of you who are probably in the southeast sections of the state or the southwest sections of the state, you're finding that some parents are becoming foster parents to make money. And they'll have 4 or 5 foster children there, and that's their source of income because any kind of jobs have just dried up, coals dried up, things like this. And they're getting kids from out of state that have police records that we don't know anything about. Or they might be behaviorally disordered kids that came from another county or another state that no paperwork's coming in there. And you're, saddling these schools with, let's fix this, this situation. It's my job as a state director to see if we can't bust through some of those hurdles and get more information to you. 610-345 is one of them. And also this whole foster care thing, when you start trying to have so many foster parents there, they have so many kids they don't know what to do with. we need to be able to get information to you all saying, here's what you're getting. And so that's something that kind of concerns me as well. For my secondary folks in here, there was a law that was passed, and I think it was one of the worst laws that were ever passed in our state legislature. It was called Senate Bill 200 about 5 years ago. And they basically took juvenile court away from the principals as far as being able to threaten the kids with, if you get into a fight, if I catch you pushing drugs here, I'm going to take it to court. Well, now with Senate Bill 200, kids have 4 shots at being diverted before they see a judge. Right here in Richmond, Judge Earl Ray Neal says, send those kids to me on the first offense, and I'll scare them into submission that they'll never do that again. But we're seeing now juvenile crime is rising, like it was rising before COVID, it's rising now after COVID. And so there's movement afoot from my shop and other DPPs around the state who hate this law that are trying to get the kids before the judge during the first offense, being able to help our principals deal with this down the road. Are there any more questions, Morgan?
No.
Okay, let me get into another thing. Vaping. That certainly is one of the worst things that's happened in our state as well. I'm seeing, Keith, I only have about 1 more minute here, so I'll bring it to an end. But vaping is a major, major problem, as you all well know. And this is where you get your Chamber of Commerce's in to start working with the local convenient food markets and stuff like that, sell these vaping pens to everybody, and see if you can't find some ways to curb that through your community. Again, we receive these kids coming through our front doors, and we only have 15% of a calendar year. Somebody's got to step up to the plate and help us on outside of the 4 walls of a school when it comes to this vaping issue. And I could spend the rest of the time on this, but I will bring it to a conclusion and kick it back over to you, Keith.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Thanks everyone who asked a question. We appreciate it very much. I think a lot of those things resonate with our principals on the daily. And so very much appreciate that. I am going to open up all of the breakout rooms again. So breakout room hosts, you can head back to the spaces, and presenters head on there now. Everyone else, the breakout rooms are open. You can join those. The next session will start in about 10 minutes. So if you want to take a quick break, get a snack. John's still here. If you need to ask him any questions, following up, I'm sure he'd be glad to answer you here in the main room. So thanks a lot, and let's have a good rest of the day. Need a whole session on vaping prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true. Yeah.
Or parents buying vapes for children prevention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Keith, one of the things that boards of education come to me on, some of them are actually entertaining wanting to arm teachers. And that gets to be a whole different ball of wax right there. And, I've addressed several boards of education on this thing. And one guy said, now, if I need to shut up, you let me know. But this one gentleman spoke, he said he was born and raised with a gun in his hands. He hunts all the time and things like this. And so I said to him, I said, have the deers ever shot back at you? And he had the deer in the headlight look when I said that, no pun intended. And I said, my office right here at Richmond sits right next door to the Department of Criminal Justice Training. That's where they train everybody, including the SWAT teams. SWAT teams only hit their targets 15 to 20% of the time. And that's a whole issue. When you meet with Ben Wilcox, Ben will tell you, who was firearms instructor here, police officers don't have their guns in their holsters, just like you would see at the shootout at the OK Corral where they can pull it straight out. They have 3 different ways of securing that before they pull it out. So somebody can't walk up behind them and snatch the gun out of their holster. Mm-hmm. When people have concealed carry, they aren't taught how to do that. It's called weapon retention. So that's one issue. The other issue is, are they mentally able to take a kid's life? Another issue is, are they going to be accurate enough during a shootout? And what about collateral damage? And of course, I think I understand what's going on, but now our folks from down in Southeast Kentucky will say, well, John, the closest first responders 30 minutes away, what would we do? There's a thing called a LEOSA, and that is a retired law enforcement officer that has permission to carry a firearm. We find a lot of papaws out there that are retired police officers that are still allowed to carry their firearms, and principals can pay them a classified amount of money or even a stipend to come around and walk the halls and be out there at the front as a greeter, or whatever the case may be, to help out. They do not have the power of arrest, but they have the power of the firearm. If somebody starts coming in there with a gun blazing, then Papaw can take the gun and shoot somebody. But there are other permutations that we can suggest with them on that. But the bottom line here is that we don't want to arm any one of our educators at all. We want the law enforcement officers to be the ones that handle that.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Keith, you're still recording. Someone
Yeah, I
wanted
wanted to
let
get
you
that.
know.
And I wanted
Okay.
to get this one other thing. It says,
Yes.
John 6:10, 3:45 says when a child is adjudicated guilty, and they're asking, that would be the end of the trial. Is that correct?
No, go down to the third paragraph where it says charged.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Well, I was just reading from the chat. Somebody had
Yeah.
asked that.
Yeah, and originally it was adjudicated guilty. Then we came back in and revised it to say that we want to know when the kid has been arrested. So
Yeah.
that, I think that's in the third paragraph right there, number 3. I'd
Yeah,
have to
they
go
were
back.
asking because they said that they wouldn't be
He sees
notified
it.
until
Mhm.
months after the fact.
No.
So that's
Well,
good information to have updated. Yeah, good deal.
You've got one more, John.
Okay.
Do you recommend the vape detectors?
What kind of detectors, metal detectors are you saying?
No, the vape detectors. They're selling vape detectors now that you can put in bathrooms
Yes,
or anywhere, really.
yes,
You do recommend them?
yes.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now for this session. Thanks.